All right, this is David Summers from the Field Enablement team, and I'm excited to be with Allison Mueller today. Allison's a strategic account leader in the public sector team, and she's going to share with us her thoughts on effective discovery best practices. So Allison, really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, David.
Well, we'll kick things off with, as you think about effective discovery, what do you know today about discovery best practices that you wish you knew earlier in your sales career?
Yeah, so it's funny, this is kind of a basic one, but I remember back in my career very early on, one of the things that I think I was not comfortable with when I was doing discovery with a prospect was asking for clarification or asking to confirm understanding, or if I didn't understand a term that they were using, asking the prospect to explain what that means to them, because it's okay if you're not familiar with every aspect of the prospect's business or their organization. There's going to be things that are unique to them, but trying to not be shy when confirming understanding or asking follow-up questions, or even for them to repeat themselves. It's okay. Like, we're human beings at the end of the day. And I think I was always just a little hurried in getting to the next question and not making sure that I had a clear understanding of whatever it was that they were describing before moving on. And I think it's particularly important, in my opinion, because people do have such limited time nowadays, and you want to try to get as good quality information in that first discovery call as you possibly can, especially if that is going to be the activity that prepares you for doing a follow-on demonstration or a capabilities briefing, for example. So that's definitely something I wish I had learned a little bit earlier, but am now a little bit more comfortable with in doing discovery.
What's an example that comes to mind, Allison, if you think even hypothetical? So a customer says this, and maybe years ago you'd have just kept going, but now you would ask a follow-on question. Well, what's a real life example?
I just had one of these happen to me on the other day, which is why it was top of mind, but I can't remember the exact jargon that they used, but it was kind of a customer specific, jargon where I, asked them to explain, like, I know what that word means to me, but what does it mean to you in the context of your organization and the way that you operate and specific to you. So that is something that I had to clarify, with a customer just very recently.
Gotcha. Very good. And I think that's where I'll pull in some of the force management stuff, the TED acronym, right?
Yeah.
Tell me, explain to me, describe to me, right? When you're seeking
exactly.
additional clarity. So yeah, cool. What are some of your go-to discovery questions when you're meeting a new contact? I mean, I know a lot of this is situationally dependent, but anything come to mind in terms of how, some go-to questions?
Yeah, I think one that's not even very situationally dependent is kind of what keeps you up at night. What is super painful for your team? What is it that you think you could be doing better? What's a blocker for you? What are the things that you feel like you're not doing well? Maybe not because you don't have the right skills or people, but, are there obstacles to you kind of achieving your mission, whatever that is? And is that something that we can kind of parse out and, see if there's a way that we can help you with whatever that problem is.
Okay, cool. And then, when do you typically ask that question? I imagine that's not the first one you lead with.
No, usually not the first one I lead with, but I think once I have a good sense for who it is that we're talking to, what are their roles within that organization, what is it, that they're interested in learning on the call, and what, if anything, they want to address. And then once we kind of understand those basics and maybe a little bit more information about their project and any initiatives they have, I like to bring up what is concerning to them, or what, risks to their not doing, something to solve this problem their organization would face. Because I think if you know what the consequence of them not doing anything or staying the same or not solving their problem is, that's really, I think, getting at what is going to motivate them, to move forward in this process with you. And what is, that motivation, is that time bound? Is there something that they need to meet by a certain deadline? Is there a certain regulation or, threat to the organization that they need to manage? And if that's something that we can help them overcome, that can be a really good, that's the foundation for a really good partnership, I think, between, our organization and their organization.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a good lead into my next question is, you mentioned kind of going that next level deeper to understand, what are the implications of not doing this? Tell me more about how do you get, below that surface level pain point, and how do you resist the urge to be like, oh, we can help there, right? But really get to, okay, you're experiencing that pain, but so what? How big is it? Who cares? Like, what are ways that you do that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways I do that. So I think at a most basic level, if it's more technical in nature, one of the things that I like to do with the solution architect that I work with, Daniel, is I like to kind of tee up some questions for him. So maybe I've reached kind of the edge of my technical understanding when a prospect is explaining something, but I know that there's more there that we can get, but maybe I don't know how to articulate the question that's going to help us get to that information. So a lot of times I'll pivot and tag team him and say, hey, Daniel, that's a really interesting point that so-and-so just made. Is there anything else that you think is worth asking, about that specific topic? And then that gives him some space to further question if he didn't just automatically kind of jump in and start that process. The other thing that I like to do when it comes to more of the big picture and strategic side of a customer and doing prospecting is asking them or doing a little bit of research ahead of time to understand, like, contextually what's happening in that organization right now. So, maybe there is some, policy or regulation, in the public sector. For example, there's a big executive order that just came out that's going to impact not only government agencies, but also a lot of commercial organizations as well. So I like to ask them, how these things are going to impact them. And, coming from a place, having done a little bit of research ahead of time, I can try to make some of those linkages, and that usually puts us in a better position to understand the context in which the customer is making this inquiry.
Nice. How do you research in the public sector realm? I'll admit, when I've sold before, I've sold in the commercial space, so where you can find websites and things like that. Is it similar or different for public sector?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of ways. So I definitely look at LinkedIn a lot. I follow a lot of the organizations that I do business with on LinkedIn, and some of them are very active in posting articles or updates or things that they're kind of working on. We also, in the public sector, have a way to kind of pull up different requests for information or solicitations that are coming out from the government through tools like GovWin and SAMS.com, which is something that they post a lot of public facing acquisition related information on. So there's usually a number of resources that I rely on. I also do a lot with partners. So, really leveraging channel partners who have good relationships within my account. A lot of times they will get wind of new projects or new initiatives very early in the process before some of these things even come out, with a lot of information publicly. So I try to, between networking and looking to a few different resources where there's public information available, usually just try to get as much information as I can from those sources before going into a discovery call. And it's not something that's exhaustive. I don't need to spend like 2 days researching, right. But, kind of getting some key points, maybe spending 45 minutes, spending an hour before a call, just making sure that I've, done some basic background research if I don't know a tremendous amount about this specific prospect, before going into a call.
Got it. Cool. And I love what you said about, yeah, sales is a team sport, tagging up with your SA, Daniel, to he can ask questions as well. So if the both of you are kind of playing off of each other to really get to underlying issues, that's great. I think that's an awesome best practice of, yeah, you're not alone. Got other
Yes,
folks to help you and
absolutely.
partners. Yeah. So yeah. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm good.
Can you think of an example of where, so I want to talk about connecting to the biggest problem or a higher level issue or initiative? Does a particular example come to mind in your sales pursuits where, what did you do to be able to connect it to a higher level issue?
Yeah, so I have one in particular that comes to mind. So there's an organization that I work with that is responsible for a lot of the cloud strategy and cloud execution in the organization that I do business with. And I knew that there were a couple of efforts that they had released some public information around about doing application modernization and cloud migration. And, when I think of where, GitLab fits in well with, customers that have a focus around doing application modernization, that's going to entail some development work. So, very early on, I identified that organization as a key one to get aligned with, to start having some conversations around, because if they were going to take advantage of the cloud and prioritize that in their organization overall, then they needed kind of an easy ramp to enable people to start taking advantage of the cloud and of kind of reworking some of these applications, and that is a very development centric activity. So I think just seeing within an organization, if there are particular organizations or projects or efforts that have some alignment, that's, I think, a good place to start in terms of identifying who's likely to have a common goal and common interest.
Yeah.
I don't love the way I answer that question, but I don't really know if I could. I'm trying to be specific, but also not be specific with public sector. That's like the problem.
Yeah. No, that's fine. It's fine.
Reference.
In that example, was that one where you didn't have an active opportunity, but you found out that, oh, they're doing app modernization, they're doing some cloud stuff. Now let me go prospect into there to find out, or was there a conversation going on? You knew about that and you were able to connect maybe a lower level issue with the app modernization initiative.
Yeah, so I think we already knew that there was a cloud agency within this organization that I was working with that was being stood up, and it was going to be brand new. Okay. So I think we early on identified that organization within the larger parent organization as being a good place to get connected with people, familiarize them with GitLab and what we kind of can do. But I think downstream of that, we realized there are all these kind of sub initiatives that ultimately roll up to that cloud organization, and GitLab could be an enabler to a lot of those different sub initiatives. So I think having an understanding of that high level one allowed us to connect into more of those like smaller project efforts, but that ultimately kind of nest within that larger kind of parent initiative, if that makes sense.
Yeah, nice. All right, I'll ask the next one. This one's going to be about happy ears. So we'll define happy ears as, when a customer prospect says something, sounds like exactly like our sweet spot, the kind of problem we solve all the time. How do you resist the urge to begin to position GitLab before really understanding the underlying issue and how big the problem is and who cares and some of those details?
Yeah, I think understanding like the why now question helps you like avoid happy ears to some extent. So, why is somebody coming to you, or why are you open to having a dialogue about this now? Like, why do you want to go down this path of inquiry? Because if they are doing basic market research and trying to stay up to date on like the latest technology, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be ready anytime soon to actually engage in a meaningful dialogue and kind of properly evaluate our technology, or even have a need to, look at your solution right now. So I think if you understand kind of why they're open to having a conversation at this stage, whether there's some compelling event, they can have a need for everything that we, have with GitLab under the sun. But if there's not some compelling event to really drive them towards, making a purchase and making an investment and implementing our product and actually getting some use and success out of it, then you're likely to just spend the next year calling them every 3 weeks and they don't really, respond or have a need to do anything. So I think getting at that answer of like, why now, or what's, why they're interested in like, doing something, at all, is really important. And I also think that, what was the other thing I was going to say? I wrote a note. Hold on. Oh, the other thing that I have seen before, and I don't know if this is specific to the public sector business, but I have had scenarios where people go through an inquiry or line of questioning about a product because they're trying to justify a decision in the opposite direction. So, for example, if an organization maybe does a lot of business with a specific product vendor, and they're kind of doing their due diligence to do some basic, information gathering about competitive solutions, but only to use those as a basis for justifying, maybe a decision that they've already made. Like, you could kind of be taken advantage of a little bit. So I think it's important to also ask whether a prospect is evaluating other solutions, whether there's an incumbent technology vendor, that they're already doing this work with, and really making sure that, they're spending time talking to you and wanting to learn more about your product because there's a true interest and a true evaluation and, an activity that warrants, a time investment on both parties. Because I think a big part of sales is knowing how to prioritize time and, not spending cycles on activities that are really not going to move forward, for either party, right? Like, we don't want to waste their time. They don't want to waste ours. And I think, knowing some of those basic details going into the discussion really helps you qualify and understand from a time investment, on your part, like what the level of commitment should be, and kind of setting that future, mutual engagement plan with a prospect.
Yeah, you're good. I'll change gears on you to now. Yeah, think about your favorite or most memorable discovery experience. Tell me about what that looked like, what that sounded like.
Yeah, I don't know that I have one that sticks out as the most memorable, but I can tell you about one that I had the other day that was very memorable. So we were talking to a prospect who approached us about a very specific use case or a very specific feature that they were interested in utilizing within GitLab. And they explained to us that they were currently using GitLab free. And when they described to us what the use case was that they were trying to utilize GitLab for, we actually explained, they went into the discussion thinking that they needed to license the premium version of GitLab. And when they described to us what they were attempting, we said to them, actually, you can do that using the free version of GitLab. And most salespeople probably don't want to come out of a conversation thinking, hey, well, I went into this conversation thinking this customer needed to buy something, and it turns out they can utilize the free version of GitLab and do everything that they need to do. But I will say that at the end of the day, we were able to really win a lot of trust and confidence in that prospect. I mean, they were, they were convinced going into the call that they were going to have to buy something. And we explained to them that they didn't. And what we were able to do is actually secure a second meeting with them. And they laid out, what their long-term plan was. And, they acknowledged that in this long-term plan, that there was likely enterprise features of GitLab that they were going to ultimately need to adopt, but they know that for right now, they aren't ready to get there, but they kind of committed to going on this journey with them and committed to a second meeting and learning more. So, while in the short term, maybe we didn't have something that we could kind of do with them right away, I think in telling them they didn't need to make an investment today, that really solidified, their kind of, it solidified us earning trust and that we were going to be a good, partner and be transparent with them. And I think that that really went a long way. So I think it's little moments like that that kind of surprise you, but can really go a long way with developing that customer relationship and winning that kind of trusted partner. What am I trying to say?
Status, yeah.
Your status.
Yeah.
There you go.
So that's going to be your big deal next fiscal year.
Yeah.
Cool. No, that's awesome. I know we're running out of time. Before the multi-threading, is there anything else that comes to your mind when you think of effective discovery best practices? Anything else you'd like to share?
I don't know.
I'll go back to the threading.
Yeah, maybe we go to the threading. I don't know. I'm like trying to think what I haven't touched on.
That's okay. Maybe here's a specific one. Let's say it's kind of a deeper one than the happy ears. But let's say a customer describes to you some challenges they're facing. Maybe it's, let's say in this instance, they're frustrated with Jenkins and they're every time they want to even they haven't even done an update because they know how much of a nightmare it's gonna be. What before you say, oh yeah, we can help, we've done, we've helped a lot of companies, organizations move from Jenkins to GitLab CI. What are some questions you would ask first before going there?
Yeah, I think I would ask them, how long have they been using Jenkins, and what was the initial criteria that led them to adopt that solution? I'd also want to understand what the level of proficiency is, within their organization for utilizing that technology, and whether the impressions that maybe the people who are utilizing that tool day in and day out, while those seem negative, whether there's any impressions that may diverge from the specific ones that we're hearing about in this conversation. So is anybody in leadership? Do they have a positive impression, or are there other organizations kind of ancillary to the direct one that we're having a conversation with who, may really like it and have a different experience with it? So I think those are some of the questions that I would probably want to understand a little bit better before I, just told them I could come in and replace their nice Jenkins solution. Right. No problem.
Well, thank you very much. I want to be respectful of your time. Thank you very much for taking the time today.
My pleasure. Let me know if there's anything that you want me to kind of go back and touch up, or that you need that can't be edited in the way that you want. I can always try to do one of them over or something if I need to. So just let me know. Hopefully you got some good stuff.
I'm sure. No, this will be good. This will be good.
Okay, awesome.
All right. Thanks so
Thank
much,
you.
Allison.
All right, see ya.
Take care. Bye.